Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and look, it's Connor Nielsen. And
Hi, everybody.
today, Connor and I are going to tell you how we felt about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Finally, after what feels like 6 million years, we have the proper sequel to the first two Ghostbusters movies. I say proper only in that it's in the original continuity, and the original actors have come back. Of course, directed by Jason Reitman, who was a pick that I was pretty excited about. Connor seemed like it was in the right hands, and I'm going to let Connor, I guess I'll do a real quick plot synopsis since I'm going to have Connor do his sign flip first. This shouldn't take very long. What we have is ostensibly a passing the torch movie question mark, because it's a little bit difficult to tell what, if anything, I mean, obviously, Sony wants to franchise because they want everything to be a franchise, and yeah, that Ghost Corp thing, that Ghost Core thing, all the way back in 2016, where it's like, we're gonna have this huge shared universe. So obviously, they want to make more of these things. But just looking at the film we have, without giving away major spoilers, it's kind of hard to tell what direction we would go after this with the new characters that are established. It feels like what we've got are new potential Ghostbusters in a few kids that are in a tiny town that Egon moved to years and years ago and has been preparing for the apocalypse. And then something happens and he tragically passes away, and now his granddaughter and her brother and mother have moved into his farmhouse. Everybody calls it the Dirt Farm, and because they don't know what he's doing there, and he seems to be farming something, but they can't tell, but he doesn't have crops or anything. They're like, what is he doing there? And he's been secretly planning for the return of Gozer, which is not a thing that I think is too much of a spoiler, because everything about the trailers made it very, very clear that that's what we were doing with this. We've got the demon dogs, and we've got mini Stay Puffs, and it's the same villain from the first movie. And so this kid, Phoebe, is very Egon-like, and she wears glasses just like he does that appear to be almost the exact same size even as the glasses that Egon wore, and she has a very similar temperament and some of the same kind of sensibilities, kind of the same sense of humor, but has never met the man. So this is apparently either genetic, or Egon just got lucky that he's got a granddaughter that is exactly like he was, or kind of exactly like he was. She certainly has some personality quirks that are kind of all her own, and she ends up teaming up with a kid that makes podcasts who calls himself Podcast, and they and her brother, who is mostly in the movie just to drive around a car, like her older brother is just the guy who drives the Ecto-1 mobile. That's his primary role, and also to have a love interest who is our fourth kid Ghostbusters. So very gradually we're building another team of four, and it becomes pretty clear after a while that you have analogs again for all of the original Ghostbusters. More of the movie, of course, is their I don't even know if I want to say story, but just their screen time before we finally get to the original cast, who, again, not a huge spoiler alert, because I think we all knew that they were going to be in this movie. Although I do have to say that before that last trailer came out, Connor, I didn't know whether or not they were suiting up in the movie, and I had that spoiled for me by action figures, which was frustrating. Like, a month before this movie comes out, I go to a Walmart or a Target or something, and I see, like, Ray with gray hair, and he's put on some weight in an action figure, and I'm like, really? Why are the action figures? I get why they have to come out earlier, but I wish I just stayed in my house, because I didn't really want to know that. And then there's a trailer that's now made that clear as well. But anyway, it's of course very driven by nostalgia, and has at least an attempt at having the same or a very similar tone as the original movie in a lot of ways. It's got very much that score, and a lot of the directing is an attempt at kind of aping that kind of directing, but it's trying real hard, at least in the first half or the first two acts, I should say, to not be precisely the movie we had the first time around. So anyway, let's find out how Connor felt about Ghostbusters Afterlife.
All right. Do I feel it? Do I not feel it? Let me quickly just mention my history with this franchise, because we've not really talked about this. I know you're a fan. Vince is a big fan of Ghostbusters.
This is one of the biggest fans alive of Ghostbusters.
Yeah. So
and I haven't talked to him about this yet. I don't know where he's at on this movie yet.
Because like Ghostbusters is not something I actually have a very close connection with. So I remember when I was first getting into movies in middle school, I was like, I want to get into movies, Dad. All the other kids at school seem to like know these movies that I don't. I need to know what Pulp Fiction is. I want to watch Wayne's World, Ghostbusters. And my dad said, you can watch all those, but Ghostbusters is lame. So like, you need to understand, I grew up in the household where my Gen X dad didn't like Ghostbusters. So that's basically what it is. I didn't watch the original Ghostbusters until 2016 in preparation for the Pulp Fiction movie.
Wow.
So that's my history with the franchise. And I like that first movie just fine, but I don't care about it. Like, it's not this special thing for me. I think it's just a solid, like, science fiction comedy movie.
Well, then I'm very curious to see where you are with this movie in your sign flip.
Yeah. And also, like, I mean, I don't like the 2016 movie, but I don't hate it. Like, it's just, like, a generally unfunny, like, modern comedy. Like, most unfunny modern comedies are. Like, I don't see what's especially bad about that movie, because I'm just not a fan of this franchise. But, with Afterlife, I am feeling it. Not that was cruel. I know. It's also funnier than anything that happens in this movie.
I don't agree with that, but go ahead.
I think this is the worst movie I've seen all year, and that should be said with an asterisk next to it. I haven't watched a lot of movies this year. I've seen about 40. So it's between this or The Conjuring.
That would be a lot for me. I don't know that I've ever had a year where I watched 40 movies that came out the same year, but I'm not the film buff that you are, certainly.
Look, in 2016, I watched 180 movies, so it's like, compared to that, I'm not what I used to be, but I'm also not, I'm making effort to not go to the movies all the time. I'm trying to make my own stuff as opposed to just watching stuff all the time. But, with this though, like, I don't know, this hit a nerve because for the first two acts, this movie was only horribly boring. I think that the for me anyways, it was really dull. I thought the movie had this rhythm that never quite clicked. I thought it was awkward, and I didn't like any of the characters. I thought the mom character was just awful, and her kids were awful, but I can't blame them because this is their mom. And I oh my word, and like, Paul Rudd is there because he has to be a love interest for Carrie Coon's character, and he's, I guess, attracted to her. I don't know, she's like roughly the size of an average human mother. I don't know what the point, like, what he finds it like interesting about her. So okay, then the final act of this movie,
her
I'm not going to get
kids, I think.
What's that?
Right? Like, it seems like a guy who's attracted to a woman because he likes her kids.
I guess so. Yeah, maybe. But the final act of this movie is one of the
and also, let me say real quick, is bizarrely the stand-in for Louis Tully at the end of the day.
Yes.
Because she's your Dana Barrett and he's your Louis Tully, and they're going to become the dogs.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But the final act of this movie is one of the most shamelessly cynical things I've ever seen. And I think that, like, 2020 changed me just as a viewer of movies, where, like, I know that in the franchise-crazed, IP-obsessed era of Hollywood that we've been existing in, um, like I understand this was inevitable in the trajectory of what that was, but with 2020 just zip gone, everything has to get delayed. This felt like an antique. This felt like a mummy or something that had come to life and was trying to get me in the movie theater. Where it's like I felt like I've moved past this kind of entertainment because like the world's different now. Like the world isn't 2019 anymore, and I get that. Like, but even in 2020, this would have felt like the Mummy to me. This would have felt like, how do we get a franchise out of stuff we own? And I think I hate Sony. I see the trailer for No Way Home, and I see the trailer for Morbius, and I see this movie, and it's like this. These don't feel like movies to me. It feels like what is like the plots and the stories, if you know, the ideas for stories feel like the thinnest possible um what are they called, assembly, like lines, to like try to like feed the audience iconography they recognize. And the final act of this, it is like cynical corporate, like um nostalgia bait, like just trying to masquerade itself as some kind of meta legacy thing. This makes Space Jam 2 look like X-Men Days of Future Past to me. Like I don't know. This one did a number on me, and I feel like I'm just like saying things out without providing evidence. But look, for the first hour and a half, I was just uninterested, and I was willing to chalk that all up to just taste. But the last thing is tasteless, so I can't, have taste for it. Anyways, I've been really, really mean about this movie. I don't mean to be. I know some people are absolutely loving this. I don't want to disparage anyone for actually enjoying this, but for my own self, like I was almost asleep by like minute 45, and I was like struggling to stay awake. And then the last half hour, oh, I was awake, but it was because I was in disbelief. Um, I kind of hated this movie. Anyways, those are my general thoughts.
Connor, a lot of people say that the worst thing a movie can be is boring, and I've never agreed with that. I don't like my time being wasted, certainly, but I like being insulted even less. And for me, the only thing worse than so people say like the only thing worse than a really terrible movie is a really boring movie, and of course, there's some things that can be terrible in fun ways still. For me, the only thing worse than being a genuinely just awful movie that doesn't come together is to be a movie that felt like it was going somewhere and that I was with okay, and then decides it's not even a story by the end. And that's what I kind of felt like I had here. This is the first half to two-thirds of this is a story, or it's working its way toward a story, and it feels like a narrative, and it feels like things are happening, and there are characters being introduced and developed in some way, and they're maybe somewhat thin, but there's potential in some of them. And I didn't find everybody as irritating as you did, but I also was kind of giving it the benefit of the doubt and assuming that by the time we got to the end of the movie, there would be a character arc or character arcs that would, draw me through it, and where, I would find myself appreciating these people a little bit more. I liked the Phoebe character fine, even though she seemed maybe a little bit too much of a clone, of course, of Egon. And then you get to the end and it goes, no, you know what, psych, like, forget all of that. All of that is there, it feels like, just to justify a tribute. All the end of this movie is a tribute. When the big conclusion, I'm trying not to give too much stuff away for people that haven't watched this yet. When the climax of this movie happens, it felt like an SNL sketch to me. It was bizarre. I don't want to say embarrassing, or certainly I didn't find this movie at the end of the day embarrassing on the same level or in the same ways that I did 2016, but I found it massively disappointing. it really felt like somebody, and this absolutely could be what happened, given that it is Sony. Because I'm with you. I think I'm at that place with the studio as well. Uh, it it felt like somebody was writing an actual movie, and then Suits stepped in and said, "No, it has to be just a bunch of self-referential kind of nonsense. Let's just in the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie." Let the audience experience the first movie all over again, and in a way that's almost worse to me than if it was just the same movie again on like with different trappings. Like I have a lot more respect for Ghostbusters 2 after this movie because it's got the same kind of cookie cutter plot to some degree as the first movie, or I shouldn't say cookie cutter because I mean I think the story in that first movie is great, but it's hitting the same beats kind of just with kind of different skins. You can't say that about the first 2/3 of this movie. It's not the same story, certainly. It's hitting some of the same stereotypical beats as a lot of decades later sequels. Certainly, you can see some Tron Legacy, and you can see some Indiana Jones 4, and yada yada yada. You've got some of those same tropes, but there was potential. There were places that it might have gone, and the fact that I don't think that we're doing anything especially creative with the history of the Ghostbusters past that first movie, notwithstanding, because that's a little bit disappointing to me. At least you had some new characters that maybe could have, been fun to play with after this. And I thought, by the middle of the movie, Connor, I was thinking, we've got maybe a mediocre setup movie, yet another one of those, and then maybe we'll get like the real, fun, neat Ghostbusters sequel after this. And by the time we got to the third act, I didn't trust that would ever happen now, and I don't even know how much I care. And I hate that. Like, I don't want to say that what you've got here, like with these characters that have taken over is unsalvageable, because like a decent movie could be made with them after this, certainly, but I'm not going to be excited about it until I see it. I waited for this movie forever and ever, because I am a Ghostbusters fan, and it like Star Wars is a thing that I know has legs, and I know you could tell more stories with and do some more interesting, very different things. I'm not saying that it's as versatile as Star Wars, certainly, but I've read some cool Ghostbuster stories in comics and stuff, and there's other places you could go, certainly, and this material treats it like it's a thing that doesn't have legs, and like Jurassic Park, we just have to find a way to keep milking it and get people's money, and maybe we can make them happy enough, satiate them enough by just throwing lines and situations and things at them that they'll recognize. So we throw around the word nostalgia here a lot, and I think it's important to note that I don't think nostalgia in and of itself is bad, certainly. Like, I'm a very nostalgic person. I can't help but be excited when something that I love comes back, if there's any chance that it might be decent. But there's a difference between a thing giving you a nostalgic feeling and banking entirely on it. Like, those are totally different things. So, like, one of the big things that this movie is getting praised for is nostalgic tone, which I agree with. But when you get to the end, it's not a story anymore. It's not about anything anymore, and it just becomes recycled again. And I also think that there is no integrity hardly at all in the way the tribute to Harold Ramis is handled, and I don't want to talk too much about that, but I hated it, and it was the thing I was really terrified they would do, and they went there, and that's not okay. I don't like it, and I don't care that it's some of the same guys from the original Ghostbusters maybe making that decision and going there. I think it's a misstep. Like you said, I think it feels pretty cynical. I'm certainly turning my sign red on this. It's weird. I enjoyed, from the two sign flips we have, I enjoyed this movie until the third act, I think, a lot more than Connor did. but it might be possible that I dislike it more than he does, because I'm so disappointed and upset by that ending. I felt insanely insulted by it, and I don't think I've gritted my teeth more during a mid-credit scene ever than I did with this. It pissed me off. Like, I can't help it. I have to say that. I have to go that far. That made me angry.
Which one?
The mid-credits.
Oh yeah.
There's a mid-credits and an after-credits.
Okay.
And that mid-credit scene, it's just insulting. Like, we won't get into what exactly it is, but tell me how that situation even happens.
Oh, I don't know.
Like, how do those people go there and choose to do that thing except just to remind us of a scene that we've seen before so that we can feel like, good fans that are giving our money to a thing that we support, right? Like, that's what that kind of thing feels like. And there was already so much of that at the end of the movie. I was already really geared up, and then that happens, and I'm like, look, guys, I own the movie. I can go back and watch it again. Like, you're not impressing anybody by quoting Ghostbusters in your Ghostbusters movie. Stop it. And of course, 2016 was already doing that kind of thing, and you expected that. And that's a carbon copy plot done much more poorly. And like you said, is just a modern comedy. By the way, to a thing you said about that, I don't want to spend a lot of time just talking about that movie, but I thought it was interesting when you said that you couldn't get as upset and riled up about it as a lot of people did. Not just because you're not a big Ghostbusters person, but because you've seen modern comedies, and that's what a lot of those are like. And I suspect that a lot of people that saw that movie don't watch those kinds of things, because I certainly don't. And it's gonna irritate you more. But anyway, that's just an aside. I just want to throw that out there. But Connor, the only way a thing, like I said, it's just a tribute at the end of the day, and the only way a thing like that works is if it's impossible to go back to the material in the first place. Like, you could kind of do a thing like this, sort of, if it was the 1950s, and you were making a new sequel to a thing that came out in the 20s or the 30s, and then, people got to go see it one time in the theater, and then they're being rewarded for 20 years later remembering all the quotable jokes and things. You can't do that in 2021. Stop it. And I think it's interesting that you said that this feels like a relic of another time now. I don't know that we're not just going to keep making a lot of movies like this. I'm really kind of terrified of that, because...
Oh, I know Sony's going to keep doing it. We got a Spider-Man theme one. It's the same ride, but this time themed with Spider-Man. I know I have...
And I'm terrified Matrix is going to be like that.
Maybe.
You know, the next two major things that we have to review could be this all over again. And I'm not looking forward to that. I hope they're not. But this kind of thing is what I've been worried that Spider-Man's going to be like. And I know that there are people out there that want that, that really enjoy that. There's a huge market for this, and I think to some degree Endgame proved it. And I was not in the camp when I saw that the first time that felt like that movie was too horribly self-referential or was just like repeating the greatest hits too much. I felt in the moment like they earned it a little bit, but I gotta be honest with you, as I'm seeing some things that are coming after it that seem to be kind of jumping onto that bandwagon and playing the greatest hits and all of that, and after I've watched that movie more, I'm starting to feel more that way about it, like some other folks do. And I don't know, it's just that was one of the biggest moneymakers of all time, and I think there are studios that are looking at that and going, well, we kind of like what you said earlier, we have this IP, we can do the greatest hits with that thing too, not really write much of a story, and just have an excuse for people to sit there for 2 hours while we just cram stuff down their throats that they could go watch on streaming or Blu-ray or something.
Yeah.
Stop it.
So this movie made me appreciate, well, I appreciate the 2016 Ghostbusters more now, not in the sense that it's a good movie or anything, but in the sense that like it showed their hand. And the first thing I took notice of with this is people will say, "Oh, it's so sincere, and it's so reverent, and it's not though." And because if that was the case, they would have put this out in 2016. This is as much of an apology for the 2016 movie as it is a tribute or whatever. But like,
yeah, when it really overcompensates.
And when you see the ghost core logo at the top of the 2016 movie. You see the Ghost Core thing at the top of this. If this movie, if no one likes this movie and it doesn't make any money and it's a big flop or whatever, there's no reason for me to believe they're not going to go, okay, third time. What are we going to do with the Ghost Core thing? Let's reboot Ghostbusters again. And like, I don't know, like this felt like the reverence of this movie felt so calculated to me that like I couldn't see it as some kind of honoring of whatever legacy that they're trying to uphold.
I agree with that too. I mean, when I say tribute, I mean in the same kind of way that people make tribute videos on YouTube. I mean, it kind of felt like that, where it's just let's take the greatest hits and throw it all in a blender and give it to you again. I don't even mind necessarily. Like I was disappointed to find that we were going to do Gozer again. Because I think that there's lots of cool things you can do with Ghostbusters. But I was open-minded enough to, hoping that my mind would be changed. Hoping that there was, Gozer had some other kind of plan this time, was going to handle things differently. Yeah, not really. I mean...
I got an idea. What is the real life, like, house? Or I guess that gives it away. So Amityville is, like, the go-to primo, like if you are a schlockmeister, you make an Amityville movie because it's a true story. It's in the public domain. There are like over 30 Amityville movies out there. They're all like $2 piles of trash, and they're all like crappy exploitation movies. Make an irreverent comedy that's a parody of Amityville movies and send the Ghostbusters into Amityville to like go get some ghosts. I don't know. That's an idea that I pulled right out of my butt right now. Like, I don't know. It is shocking how, like, on a dime, how fast this thing just turns into a clone of the first movie. It's shocking.
Well, see, I was shocked that it happened as late as it did.
But like, it's crazy. Like, there's all the things kind of heading in that direction.
No, that's true.
But then like, immediately, like there's like, it's like opaque. There's like a moment where like all of a sudden the movie just turns around, and then like all of the kid Ghostbusters are talking like they're MCU characters, and they have this highly calculated plan. They know exactly the mythology. They know, like, whoa.
You're right. They kind of turn into different characters all of a sudden. And you get to a point where it feels like there's some kind of internal logic for a while, and then all of a sudden there's not. All of a sudden it feels like a cartoon. Like, Egon just happens to have... Let's get into... Let's go ahead and allow for some spoilers now, if we can, because there's a few things I'd like to mention that will kind of require that. We've been going for almost half an hour, so folks that don't want to know anything else, I mean, you've heard me basically just froth at the mouth and go, I'm really disappointed. I'm sorry if this video's not as articulate as what I usually do, but I was not totally sure how to approach this, because I'm just frustrated and seeing the writing on the wall and terrified that a lot more of your kind of decade later sequels and, you know, reverential movies are going to continue being like this. This is not the first of these by any stretch at all, but I thought this one would be better than this. I really did. Would be better than to go to that much of that kind of place, and it did, and it just hurts my feelings. But anyway, so spoiler stuff now. We won't go through everything. This is not a spoiler cast, but we will allow for spoilers now for the rest of this. So, Connor, riddle me this. Why does Egon in his lab, which is a cool set, by the way, why does he have... I mean, can we just talk about this for a second? I think the movie looks fine. I think it's directed fine.
Yeah. Really nice production design. I like the color grading a lot.
Yeah.
It's obviously aping that kind of Spielberg, J.J. Abrams look. I think it's better directed than a J.J. Abrams movie. It's more cinematic, I think. It has really good special effects. It's a solidly produced movie. I want to throw that out there.
Well, don't you think that it's attempting to appeal to two audiences simultaneously? And I have that fear that it might end up like not really satisfying either one, where it's like, well, we've got to make the original Ghostbusters fans happy, so we're going to try to make it that kind of humor more or less, and we brought the old guys back for a few minutes at the end, but the new Ghostbusters all have to be really young so that some kids and teenagers can maybe grow up with this. I don't know how many people that age would even think to go to this movie because it I don't know, like the early advertising for this movie was very, we don't even want you to be able to tell it's a Ghostbusters movie until like a minute into the trailer. And then Sony being Sony, the way they advertise things, everything since then has been, didn't you love the original Ghostbusters? And I don't know, I think that's a mistake. But it weirdly is also kind of accurate to like the movie we ended up getting, I guess. But don't you think that it's trying to appeal to that Stranger Things crowd as hard as it is the original Ghostbusters crowd, and try to fuse those things together somehow? So like that's not just the kids and they're kind of running around a small town solving mysteries and all of that, this the kind of Scooby-Doo thing, but also just that Spielbergian look of the movie. I mean, that's a lot of why we're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Stranger Things is a large part of the pitch of this movie. If I had to guess, I think it's important to note Stranger Things came out the same summer that the Paul Feig movie came out. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, things change a lot in 5 years.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, look at Finn Wolfhard. He's in both of these things, and he's clearly shot up. As far as his height and his popularity.
Well, and that speaks to you, right? Exactly. But that speaks to your, and he's fine. I mean, he does the thing he does, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think in that way you're absolutely right that this feels a little bit like a relic, because this is the movie that you probably should have put out in 2017 or 2018 if you hadn't made that Paul Feig movie.
Well, yeah, okay, so talking about,
and then I'll get to my question in a second, but go ahead.
Okay. Now that we're in spoilers,
yeah,
I was baffled that you basically had made a point that you're making a story about this McKenna Grace character, and your main character doesn't even save the day at the end.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you for real?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's the story. That's the story transgression. The other, I mean, obviously, the big elephant in the room is you actually CGI resurrected Harold Ramis. Are you guys insane?
Yeah.
You have no class. This is
no
ridiculous.
class.
Shocking. Like, my brother and I, our jaws hit the floor. Like, we couldn't believe that was happening. And of course, McKenna Grace's proton pack is super powered because it's also being held by the ghost of her grandpa. And then when you have all four of the Ghostbusters in profile, one of course being a CGI ghost, and it's like the main character, the person whose character arc should be being fulfilled right now, she is literally cropped out of the frame because this is in widescreen. It's like he's like attaching himself to her, and she's not even in the frame because this is about, people I guess felt insulted by the first one, that they hated the original cast. I guess that's what the takeaway people had from the 2016 movie. This one's like, fine, the original cast saves the day. Basically, the original, the new cast members, the people that you spent the entire movie building up and establishing, they don't matter. There you go. If you, I don't know.
And look, you can't have both. Okay.
No.
If that's what it was gonna be, then you make it Ghostbusters 3 in 2021, and you let your Ghostbusters be in their 70s. It's fine. It's the Ghostbusters. They don't have to be pretty people. I've always agreed with Red Letter Media when in the Plinkett review he says the fatter and older they are, the better for the kind of story that is. You could have just made it all about them if that's what you wanted it to be about, or if that's what you thought that it was going to have to be to appeal to your base, but instead to appeal to the fans. But instead, you made a passing the torch movie that's not a passing the torch movie. You had the original Ghostbusters save the day at the end, and then there's no epilogue of any kind. There's no setup for what these kids are going to do after this. No takeaway for the Phoebe character. I don't know what she does after this necessarily. And it would be really easy to come back and have those four kids be your Ghostbusters moving forward. I suspect that's a hard sell. I don't know if you could do that. My guess is if this gets a sequel, it's Winston and them. where Winston is they move to New York and they become the Ghostbusters and they try to set up shop as kids, trying to start their own business or something, and he is their mentor character or like the manager guy who runs everything. That's the closest to like a setup that you had for, and I'm not saying I need sequel bait and stuff, but too many of the choices made in this seem to be choices you'd make because you want to set up a franchise, and then you didn't set up a franchise, and I'm very confused about that. The closest thing you had is Winston has the car now and puts it in the firehouse. And I thought the firehouse was a Starbucks, so I don't understand that, but whatever.
I was going to ask you that question.
Oh, I have many questions. I don't... We'll get into all that. Anyway, anything you want to respond to about what I just said, though, because I went on for a minute.
Quickly about Ray. When Ray first is called in, I think, the most contrived scene of the movie, when McKenna Grace is talking to Phoebe, I'm not sure, Phoebe, yeah. When Phoebe is talking to Ray, that scene is one of the most, like, oh, like, this is the movie you're making. Like, I realize now what's going on. It is, like, the worst kind of expository dialogue. It is not just, like, the Q&A dialogue from...
Oh, you're talking about on the phone. Like, the only scene that any of the Ghostbusters get before they very conveniently just all show up in their own suits and proton packs, which they still have, I guess. Yeah, Why does Egon have 4?
Yeah.
Just so that the kids can all use them, but then the old Ghostbusters also still have suits and proton packs. Okay.
So, yeah.
Sorry, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask.
It's the scene on the phone.
On the phone.
Where it's like in Eternals, I pointed out that I didn't like the Q&A dialogue off the top. This scene is like even worse. Like, there is no reason Ray should be staying on the line of that phone. He's only staying on like, I'm gonna hang up. I know, Egon. He should have said, no, you didn't, and then hung up. Like, I don't know, like it's that scene was crazy to me, and it is just coasting off of, well, he's from the original, and we need to have them show up at the end, so we need to have some kind of interaction, I guess. But the amount of expository...
And we said raise occult books. I know what that is.
Yeah, but he just, like, exposits word vomit. This is the history of the Ghostbusters. We broke up. Egon took everything. I run a bookshop now. Winston made it big. It is... Like, he's basically reading like a fanfic Wikipedia.
And here's your litmus test with that. If it was a more character-driven scene, he could do all of that for our benefit, and then she should say, I don't know who any of the people are that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because he talks to her like she should know who they all are. And anything about them.
Yeah.
Because all she knows is that her grandfather was a Ghostbuster, and she saw a YouTube video that showed the other ones. We don't have any reason to suspect that she even knows any of the other ones' names.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Winston's not in that ad. Like,
yeah. Now, who the heck is Winston? And it's like, okay, the thing in New York with Stay Puft was sort of public knowledge, but a lot of people seem to have swept it under the rug and don't think it really happened. And you have all these kids going, I mean, we're kids. It's been 30 years. We don't know about any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't buy that the podcast kid doesn't know everything about that day, though. That was weird. Whereas, like, I've never heard of that. Really? With all, like, the research you do, and Ray watches your podcast? That was a cute moment, by the way. I like that, where Ray's like, podcast goes, you're my subscriber? I like that. That was fun. I should say, I like some of the dialogue writing in this, I think, better than you do. Or I should say, I found some things funnier than you. We didn't actually straight up do best thing, worst thing, because I was just too caught up in my disappointment. But my best thing actually might be Paul Rudd. I think he's quite funny in this. There were a number of times I chuckled at things he did. And yeah, he's doing his normal Paul Rudd thing, and but he's got the right timing. I mean, I kind of wish he was a Ghostbuster. I wish the passing the torch thing was him and these kids, maybe, or like, why not? Why does he have to be the Louis Tully stand-in? Everything about him is kind of like a cross between, in some ways, 3 or 4. of the original Ghostbusters. If you really think about it, he's like an amalgamation of all of them. And if you made him like a lead Ghostbuster, it would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah,
Because he has kind of he has kind of that arrogance. I'm just formulating this as we're talking right now. This just came to me. Like he's got that arrogance of Bill Murray's character, and then he's got the he's a scientist. So he's got that Egon thing. He's not like a brilliant scientist, which I appreciate, by the way. He's not a genius. That's cool. But he has the science thing, and then he's got some practical skills, like Winston, and he's real proactive, and he goes out and he does stuff. And then with Ray, I don't know if there's any Ray in him. The question is there any Ray in him? But there's at least some three of the four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Paul Rudd, I would say I would agree. He's probably my favorite thing about the movie too. He might be people's sexiest man alive, but he also is believable as like a schlubby schmuck. Like he's really good at that kind of everyday, kind of slightly aloof dude.
And he's one of those likable, unlikable guys to some degree. And like that was, I don't know, whenever he's on screen, it feels more like a Ghostbusters movie to me, which is why I wanted him to put on a Ghostbusters suit.
Yeah, and there's a moment where he's going shopping at Walmart where I kind of just laughed because of how blatantly, I don't know, it felt like this is not the movie's fault. It felt like a fan film or like a cheap, no budget movie where people just like, because those are the locations where you shoot those things. You don't usually see the interior of a Walmart in like a multi-million-dollar movie. It kind of made me laugh.
Here's the thing. It is the movie's fault, though. Because if that Walmart had been populated with people, you wouldn't be saying that. But what made it feel like a fan film is no one else is there. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I said that to my son. Jason goes, well, it's late at night. I'm like, it's open? Like, I've been to Walmart's late at night. It's okay, it's a small town, whatever. There's not one other person in that store. There's no one there.
It was funny, though, because I was watching that, and I was just picturing Paul Rudd in my head. Like, I was giggling through that scene because I was just picturing Paul Rudd because he's just walking and he's like, all right. And he's like talking out loud to himself as he's like getting ice cream out of Baskin Robbins ice cream, it should be said, Ant-Man. But then like he's like walking around just kind of like making noises to himself. And I'm picturing like what that must have been like on set where they're like, all right, Paul Rudd, action. And he's like, am I just gonna quietly walk over to this? Like, I gotta do something. I'm an actor. I gotta.
Yeah, well, I feel like he's trying to add anything to the scene because what he's about to interact with is a bunch of CGI tiny Stay Puffs, and for him, there's nothing there.
But that's like he made me giggle a couple of times.
Yeah,
I think Paul Rudd's a funny guy, and like so him making like the all right like to himself when he's like buying ice cream or something.
He brought some authenticity to it.
Some vacant Walmart somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. There was something weirdly amusing just from like a outside of the movie thing for me.
And he and that actress had enough chemistry. I just wish that she had a more interesting stuff to do and more character motivation beyond just my dad didn't care about me, so I don't like science, and then he had pictures of me, so I guess it's fine. And then that's it. That's all you get. That's her whole everything.
She comes off as the most shallow character ever in this movie. Where
I think the actress is trying. I don't know who that is.
Oh yeah, Carrie Coon. She's a character actress. You've seen her in stuff. She's like Ben Affleck's sister in Gone Girl. She's Proxima Midnight. She's Proxima Midnight which is a CGI character from Infinity War and Endgame.
And a CG character that I complained shouldn't have been a CG character. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think she's in Fargo, the TV show. Like, she's in stuff.
Sure.
And she's like, she's really good in Gone Girl, by the way.
Yeah, I know you like that a lot. I should watch that at some point. It seems like I've dodged some of the raindrops that she's been in, so yeah.
But she's a really good actress, but like her character just, why are they getting evicted? They don't really go into why.
No.
Like, and like you'd expect, like she's at the diner, but she has to like always cut shifts because, doggone it, my son's always getting into trouble. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? And like, you don't blame the kid so much because he's just trying to live his life and figure stuff out, but it's causing her to like lose hours. Maybe that, like, so it just kind of comes across like, oh, I guess she's just super financially irresponsible. So now she has to like rely on like an inheritance, and she was like expecting more from her inheritance. Like, I've had relatives die and I've gotten nothing in inheritance
Yeah, she
lately.
was just
Wow.
disappointed that Egon didn't have any money.
Yeah, and it's like, but I really just wanted him to have a picture of me. It's like, okay, I get like having one of your parents to like have like take to care about you. I get that that's a desire every kid wants to have. Like, so it's like it's not completely unsympathetic, but there's enough there that's not sympathetic. Where I was like, wow, you're really doing this character dirty, movie. And
I think
then
so too. And then we just aren't gonna get into enough or really any background with her and her father and that whole family for me to really appreciate and care about any of that. And that's a lot of what makes it feel like it's a little bit like emotionally manipulative or kind of insulting, where I wasn't there until we got to the end and I saw what the movie was really getting to, what it really wanted to be, because all of that is there just to tell me it's a movie. And it's like, oh, you're not actually really a movie, okay. Because if they wanted me to find her a interesting sympathetic character, it should have it should have given us anything about what her relationship was with her father at all. It was just, okay, he never really paid attention to me, that's it. I needed more family history. The one of the biggest disappointments for me was who married Egon. How are we not told who his wife was? You're gonna have Janine there, but she wasn't his wife, which I think is a big misstep. And like, you don't have to do that. I'm not saying it's bad because it's not what I wanted, but then you didn't tell me who it was instead?
yeah,
Okay, like, so let me get this straight. The Ghostbusters break up. Like, the history of this is so not thought out at all, it really bugs me. So what you're telling me is the Ghostbusters break up, and Egon goes off and starts preparing for what he thinks is the end of the world. And like the Ghostbusters only have apparently like a few jobs after the second movie, where I like Ray's line, like, we did our job too well, and it goes from like 10 calls a week down to 1, and then we can't pay the bills anymore. Nobody needs Ghostbusters, so we leave. I don't get why there's no ghost sighting at all for 30 years. Like, that's kind of weird. Like, so are you telling me the only ghosts they had to bust were whatever were still flying around from the first time the containment unit broke out? Maybe because the big threat of the second movie didn't have anything to do with that, which would suggest that there might be some other random threats that have nothing to do with Gozer. But,
yeah.
But like, the movie's not thinking about any of that. It just goes, well, there were 30 years in between where we never made a Ghostbusters 3, so I guess nothing happened. And instead of, like, I'm not saying it had to be what a lot of fans always wanted, but it's disappointing that it was nothing. Because like a lot of the fans, including myself, always wanted it to be like franchised Ghostbusters, where it's the opposite of Ghostbusters 2. Like, Ghostbusters 2, they're washed out, they're not working, they're playing kids' birthday parties, which is great, and then they have one more big threat they have to solve, and now they're back in business and they're doing well. And then if you had a Ghostbusters 3, and I would say whenever that's set, it would have been really fun if it was, now Ghostbusters are everywhere. Now there's a satellite operation in every major city in America or something, and that's how you do a shared universe, folks. It's not that hard. You can have lots of Ghostbusters and have lots of different kinds of stories with different kinds of groups. Maybe could be cool. They didn't do that, but then they also didn't replace it with anything. It was just, we didn't do anything for 30 years. And so what you're telling me is so Egon goes off and is working on figuring out the apocalypse, and then I had a whole point with this and I just can't remember where I was going with it. I'm sorry. I ran off into the weeds and now I don't remember what my original point was.
Well, I guess I can respond to that. But his daughter.
I know what it is. I know what it is. But somewhere he got married.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how does that guy, whose whole life is just like sink himself into a basement in a lab and try to prevent the apocalypse. When does he have time for a wife? Like, he's the last person on the planet that seemed like he'd ever get married. Wouldn't it be interesting to know how that happened? Like, I'm not saying it couldn't. I'm just saying the most interesting thing that probably ever happens to that guy, because he's the last person on Earth you'd think would get a wife, gets married. Okay, how did that happen?
Yeah, good.
Who the heck was she?
But his daughter forgives him because he had pictures, and he gives her a CGI ghost hug. She doesn't say, "So, why couldn't you just save the world and also be my dad?" Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what? She She doesn't get any of the answers to like the actual questions she has. So in the end, it just makes her look incredibly shallow.
Yeah, or more like a non-character. I mean, as soon as the original Ghostbusters show up, I kind of forget that any of these other characters are here, and I feel like the movie almost wants me to do that. At first, what it feels like is we have the original 3 Ghostbusters, and because Egon has passed away, his granddaughter has to take up his mantle. And wouldn't that have been better? The 3 of them, they're working real hard to stop Gozer. They've got their proton packs going. It's not enough. It's not working. Oh, man, we need 4, just like last time, because 4 is the magic number. Thank God we hired Winston, right? And and she goes, "Oh, man, I've been training for this. I'm ready." And she jumps in, and she's the 4th one. And they all look over at her. And we don't have to have any dialogue about it. You can just see in their eyes, okay, we've got our Egon. Like, he's passed, but his legacy continues, and thank God, she likes all the stuff that he likes and studied up on all of this, and she can do the things that we're doing, and then have some follow up after that, and set up something that you can do with her later, because again, it feels like it's a setup movie that isn't setting anything up really, but no, instead, we just have Ghost Egon on the end there, and for a minute I didn't even realize that it was what you said, that it was supposed to be like him helping her out with her proton pack. For a second it just seems like he's a ghost that has a ghost proton pack. I was confused for a second. I was like, oh, okay, now I see what's going on. But yeah, it's like the mom doesn't ask any questions because she and none of these characters really matter at the end of the day, and she also doesn't ask him any questions because we think that, like, we have little enough integrity that we'll do a CG Harold Ramis, but it feels like they think that it would be a bridge too far to give him a voice. And I'm just like, if you're already going to go that far,
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat with you.
We're supposed to pat them on the back for having, this is what it feels like, for having the integrity to not give CG Harold Ramis a voice. Okay. It's made so much more awkward that he doesn't say anything. And you could say, like, well, he's a ghost. Maybe he doesn't talk. But, like, I mean, the librarian in the first movie said, shh. I mean, like, I think Ghostbusters goes back and forth on this. I know that there's a lot of ghosts in those movies that just fly around and scream and stuff. I don't know. Maybe they just want to scare people that don't actually have anything to say. But in comics and stuff, there are ghosts that talk. And, I mean, I realize that that's not canonical, so, whatever. And I don't mean to get, super fanboyish or whatever about this. I'm just saying, would you have cried foul, like, just with the rules of the universe if Harold Ramis started talking, if Egon started talking? Like,
you've already taken his likeness, like his voice, like that's what we do, right? Like, if you we kind of like when you have a giant corporation that wants to like get money off of dead people, usually the most tasteful thing they'll do to try to skirt around that is you'll hear someone's voice and they'll be like, "Ooh, did you hear that? It was the voice of, I don't know, Carrie Fisher or something." Oh,
yeah.
And then, but oh, we don't want to show her likeness. That's a bridge too far. This is like, it inverts that. It's like, no, we just heard like some like Harold Ramis impersonator go, "I'm proud of you, daughter." I probably would have rolled my eyes and thought it was a hack move because it's a hack move, but like, it's got more integrity than what they did.
I thought they were being somewhat classy at first,
Yes, yes,
when
with the
she's
light.
going around with the PKE meter, and then the ghost of Egon is like leading her in the right direction and just like turning on things and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like he can be here without being here. I mean, I don't think I love that the first thing that happens in the movie is him in silhouette for 5 minutes in an action scene. Um, like, I don't think I would have minded it as much if we hadn't had Ghost Egon at the end. But like already, I'm like, this is weird, right? Like we're not. This isn't a performance because it's not the real guy, and I'm not sure we needed to see all that happen. It was shot nice. I mean, it was really cool looking. But I don't know. I was on the fence about how I felt about that, and then by the time you get to the end, you realize the actor that has passed away gets more screen time than any of the rest of the Ghostbusters that are still living. Possibly combined.
I don't think it's that much, but no, you are right.
No, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not that much. That's a little odd. But I did like the choice to have the ghost there. I just didn't want to see it. Like,
No, and I thought like for a while I thought, oh, this is. I thought it was cool. Like they have that light that kind of moves around.
yeah,
And there's sort of like Pixar way. I mean, it's just the little Luxo light from the short Pixar film.
of course.
But
Yeah.
like the way they sort of like you almost like those lights have like emotions almost with like the way they can make the head droop or whatever. Like they're basically just ripping off Pixar. But hey, if you're rip off the best, right? Like I was like, oh, they're doing a Pixar. Okay, they're sort of like giving emotions through like the ghost communicating through these objects that they're interacting with. And no, whatever.
See, I think a lot of the reason I'm as disappointed as I am is because I feel like the people that made this movie could absolutely have made a really good Ghostbusters movie. And of course, I did not have that with 2016. It was just given to the wrong guy, and he made what he makes. So what are you gonna do? With this, I was like, it feels like studio mandate. It feels like they're not letting these writers do what they might actually be able to. To give us that would be really creative and cool, because the production values are there and the attention to detail in the scenes is there, and it just hurts my feelings, like I said earlier.
And I think Jason Reitman's a good filmmaker. I've never seen him do a film like this. He usually does kind of smaller dramas.
Mm-hmm.
Like his last movie, I think, was just a political drama about Hugh Jackman, and then before that it was Tully, which was just a kind of a marriage drama, kind of with slight supernatural element. Like he makes pretty good movies, And then with this though, like I've never seen him do anything this big before. He did a really good job, I think, realizing that. But apparently on set, like his dad was there almost every day, and like there's like all these like things where it sounds like he did kind of have his hands strapped a little bit by obligation. And
wow.
I don't know, maybe he just literally got hired because they wanted to do a meta thing of this is about legacy, so let's get the kid to direct of Ivan Reitman to direct this movie.
But you think it might have sort of almost been ghost directed? I mean, there's a video with Bill Murray reacting to the mini Stay Puffs in the commercial, or just in the scene that they released, and it's not Jason Reitman showing it to him. It's Ivan Reitman, as if he's making the movie, where he's like, "Hey, Bill Murray, here's a scene you haven't seen yet."
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of proof to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to say that Jason Reitman didn't try to make this personal on some level while he was there.
Yeah,
I'm sure he did, but like it doesn't feel like he really wanted to make this movie, or if he did, it's not really the kind of movie he really ultimately tried.
I don't mean to go too far and be hyperbolic or anything. Like I don't. Obviously, I wasn't there. I don't know for sure what happened. But if Ivan Reitman is there every day on set, he's obviously like an influence. Is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe talking about this movie, I said ghost directing. By the way.
Hey, there you go. But yeah, I think that largely it's just Sony wanting to have like stuff to make it so they can sell it. Oh, if you have the son of the guy who made the original movie direct this, and it's about the child and grandchildren of Egon, then now it's a meta thing. Now,
but I also think it's to give it I also think it's to give it more credibility for the fans who have turned on you because of 2016. Where it's like
Yes.
if it
No,
looks like
yeah.
it's in the right hands, like you're right about the legacy thing, but I think yeah, you said to sell it. I think it's because they're terrified that people won't go because it hasn't been long enough since that last movie. And when that came out, I remember Eric saying it would not be smart to make another Ghostbusters movie until you get at least 10 years away from that, and we're halfway there, which is crazy that much time has passed, but we're only 5 years away from it. And I'm kind of glad it's been as long as it has, but it was only supposed to be four. This was supposed to come out last year. And you know what's crazy? They really only started working on it a year before that.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I think Aykroyd and Murray, or at least Murray, didn't sign on until like I forget what I read. Was it like February of 2019? Like it
Mm.
wasn't even a year before the movie was supposed to come out. And the only reason it got delayed obviously was COVID. Like they would have had it done by then. So like how
But
rushed was this?
I
It
don't
seems
know.
like
But
at the point where they finally had the script and they could get rolling on it, they mad rushed to get it made.
and this is the kind of going back to what I was saying. Like, I think the 2016 movie is bad, but it's honest. This is like, I feel like I was being lied to by the movie, where it's trying to tell me that it's this, like wistful, like legacy thing about, you know, generational like legacy and nostalgia and all, but it's not. It's like this is as transparent an example of film as product only that I have seen in some time. And
And it could have been what you're saying.
no, it
And
could have.
the
It could
setup was there. And that's what frustrates me. I think it has. I mean, it's got problems. Don't get me wrong. A lot of things that you complain about, even in the earlier acts, are valid. But there's places to go, though.
have. No, yeah, like that was why I was like for a while just thinking maybe this just
Is it
taste wise
for
isn't my
you?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I will say I think this is the worst Ghostbusters movie. I really don't like this.
I don't even want to try to compare it to 2016 because they're just very different kinds of bad. Because yeah, I'm just not even going to do that. So like, I don't want to say what the like the worst is. But I'm just really disappointed with it. It just. I mean, I'd rather watch this thing than the other one, even with that third act, I guess. But they're very different kinds of bad.
Yeah,
And again, this
that's
isn't all bad, but it is the kind of thing where the ending kills it. The ending absolutely kills it.
it's one of those things where when you get to the third act, you realize the first two were just kind of it was only really there to set up the last act, and it's kind of not really doing anything until the final act. And so it's really just it was kind of treading water, biding its time until you get to like the last half hour. And I it, it's just a greatest hits reel, and I don't know.
And of course, people are comparing it to Force Awakens. And what Force Awakens had going for it for me when I first saw that was, yeah, it was repeating a lot of beats and had a lot of parallels in things and too much, certainly. But a lot of people wrote that off immediately as just a complete remake of that first movie. And I still say it isn't entirely, and that there were interesting ideas that were set up that it could have continued, going with after that. And so I thought it was a fine first act if it was setting up a 3-act story. This is supposed to be the whole thing.
No, yeah, and I don't
So
know.
it doesn't even have that excuse.
Yeah, it's like Ghostbusters 2 is just the first movie over again. Like, sequels that are just carbon copies of the original. We've been doing that since the dawn of time, or the dawn of cinema. But like, yeah, but with like Force Awakens, I get the impression that it's at least trying to say something about like how like history repeats itself, and maybe not the best way. Maybe it doesn't quite stick the landing in that movie, but I think that it is trying to make some kind of effort in a few scenes. This one, nope,
Yeah,
not feeling it.
I mean, at the end of the day, what is this movie about?
That's a great question.
Because it's a movie that wants you to feel nostalgic and has lots of references and things in that third act. Again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but the first two acts I think pull off the whole nostalgia feel without just completely, being a nothing but fan service kind of thing. By the way, I meant to say this earlier. That car chase where they're chasing down the Slimer but not Slimer, really weird. By the way, that you'd have that ghost but not Slimer. At all. I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, I don't know why that's not just Slimer, but okay. But anyway, so maybe it couldn't have been. I'm not sure where Slimer would even be at this point, so that's whatever. But anyway, but like they're chasing that ghost. That was actually kind of a fun car chase. Like I like that whole sequence.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate how much
as
that
an action
was
scene.
Practical.
Yeah, exactly.
Using like real pyrotechnics on like the marquee when they pass by the marquee and they're shooting the proton packs. Like really cool pyrotechnics going off there.
Yeah, it feels like it's actually happening. So that was fun.
And I will say, regarding the special effects, I like how. So a lot of movies, because we've been living in 80s nostalgia revival culture for the last 30 years, or 20 years at least. But like
ever since it ended, 1990 is the beginning of 80s nostalgia revival. Yeah, exactly.
But it's one of those things where a lot of the 80s movies have like those. Special effects films have like those optical effects where they're just kind of like drawn on after the fact. Like along, like the proton packs are optical effects. When Gozer's shooting stuff out of their fingers, like that's optical effects. I like CG effects that are meant to look like optical effects. Like those actually look really cool.
They do.
I like the way they look in this movie.
No, it was cool, and I like the practical makeup work on Gozer and all of that.
I would agree. Yeah,
that stuff looked fine.
Yeah, and like there's some really good sets in this. Like the temple underground is a really nice set.
Some nice detail down there. Yeah, absolutely.
And apparently, it only cost $70 million. This is a really good-looking $70 million budget.
I didn't realize that the budget was that low. That's pretty cool, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But. Like I said, it does a decent job at the beginning of being. I'm trying to figure out what the movie's about, and I want to say nostalgia, but like, not really. That's superficial, right? Like it's trying to give you a nostalgic experience. So like, is it a coming of age thing? I mean, sort of, and then it forgets the character that's coming of age. And it suddenly is a lot more interested in just tribute. So, like by the end of the day, it seems like it's, like you said earlier, more of an apology than anything.
The one thing I'm kind of pulling at is kind of broadly about friendship.
Sure.
Phoebe doesn't have friends, and then she makes a friend, and then the Ghostbusters show up because this friend of theirs is dead.
Yeah, and they
I don't know.
And they feel regretful for writing him off. But none of that worked for me. I don't understand why Ray of all people didn't believe him. I need someone to explain that to me because I'm lost. And I mean, I only saw it the one time. Maybe it would be clearer if I saw it again. But I don't get that. Like, he is, on the one hand, he's like, I thought he was nuts and he didn't know what he was talking about, and then it turned out he was right. And then on the other hand, Ray is still as into the occult as he ever did and spewing out all the jargon and stuff like he always has. Like, he would be the guy that would believe him either, or at least look into it. Like, what was his motivation for not? Was it just, I don't want to have to do this Ghostbusters thing again because that fell apart and it was like my life and my favorite thing and my feelings are too hurt that I wasn't able to keep doing it, so I don't want to get drawn back into that? It could have been that, but we didn't talk about it. We didn't flesh it out. It was just, there's so much of that in this movie, right? Like a character will just make a statement of how they feel about something or their motivation or something, and I don't know where it comes from because we're not talking about it.
And I mean, it's worse with that Ray thing. It's like, geez, you talked for 10 minutes straight and you didn't explain why you didn't believe him.
Are you with me though? That it's really weird that he didn't believe him?
I guess so. I've seen the Ghostbusters movie, the first one, once, so like, remembering all of the character dynamics it's been a while, but
the Ghostbusters tagline was, "We're ready to believe you." And Ray is the one who seems the most emphatic about that. So, like, if he doesn't believe that the end of, what does he think is Egon's motivation for lying about that? Or does he think that Egon's just gone off the deep end and he's a crazy person now? And here's another question. We do some stuff just for the sake of mood that doesn't really factor into any kind of internal logic. Like, Egon turns out to be completely lucid and right, and had everything figured out, and the Ghostbusters should have listened to him. But like a crazy person, he's writing the words of Revelation from the scene in the first movie that talks about Revelation on huge pieces of metal outside his farm. Why is he doing that?
That's a good question.
Is he crazy or is he not crazy? I'm sorry, I have turned this into a spoiler cast. I had things to say. I don't get all that.
Cap, in talking to you about this, you've made me like the movie less.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
No. There's stuff of consequence that, regarding the franchise, because you're a fan of this thing, that, like, I was just kind of like, whatever. And then you're like, but what about this and what about that? And what I'm like,
it's just a lot of careless plotting and storytelling. Like, I actually didn't mind the mini Stay Puffs like I thought I would. Did not mind that. They're only in a couple of scenes. They do some, I think, legitimately amusing things when we first see them. They're, like, really screwed up and mortifying in the right kind of way. Like, it's really fun to see them, like, turn themselves into s'mores and get in a blender and one more, there's one that gets in a blender and then it's blending for a while and then it explodes, and for a split second the smile is still there after the it's really messed up, and I loved that stuff, but it doesn't come from anywhere. Like, why does it happen? It's like, okay, so Stay Puft was the form of the Destroyer in the first movie, so now that Gozer is starting to come back, a bag of Stay Puft marshmallows turns into tiny Stay Puft Marshmallow Men. I don't know why that happens. And is it just for Paul Rudd's benefit? Like, is this happening in other places? Is it just this town? Is, like...
I mean, I imagine there's other Walmarts, right? Or maybe there's only the one in this small town, but... I mean, maybe there's, like... is there a convenience store on the other side of town that has Stay Puft Marshmallow that...
Or is it supposed to be... Let me think about this for a second. Because maybe it makes more sense than I'm thinking it does, at least that weird things are happening around Paul Rudd, because he's going to turn into one of the dogs. And that happened with Dana Barrett, and crazy stuff was happening in her apartment, in her fridge, and on her counter.
Okay. I mean, you're probably onto something there, but when it's such a public...
But why is it specifically the Marshmallow Man? And it's weird because it's like the Gozer remembers what happened in the past until the scene really wants to just repeat a thing that happened in the first movie, right? So, like, it could only be, I'm overthinking this, but it could only be Stay Puft again because that happened before, and Gozer or Gozer's minions, like, have actual recollection of the past. But then why does she ask Ray if he's a god, except just so that we can have Winston go, really? Because she has met these guys before and knows they're not gods. Why does that happen again?
That was, like, the point where I knew they were going to show up, but the way they show up to really just reenact a scene that's
why it says it feels like an SNL sketch.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of okay jokes in there. I will say Bill Murray actually looked like maybe he wanted to be there enough.
He was there out of guilt. He felt bad. Like, they got him there because they're like, well, we're doing a big tribute to Harold Ramis. You better be there or you're going to look like a jerk.
If he faked it, he faked it okay, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Murray was one of the only few things I chuckled at. Like, when he's going on and on and on at the end. Bill Murray knows how to do the bit that doesn't end better than anyone else.
Yeah.
And I know this because every modern comedy has every character go on and on and on forever and ever, amen. So Bill Murray can actually do it, okay? And he's funny. Bill Murray's just a funny guy, and he can do it.
But you will never be able to explain to me why he and Dana Barrett get into a situation where he is hooked up to the zapper thing from the first movie, to the electricity device, and she's showing him the cards, except for everybody. Oh, I remember that scene. That's people quote that all the time. This is hilarious. Like, you need context for a scene, and this completely baffled me. So they bring, I still can't even believe they did this. They bring what's her face, Dana Barrett.
Sigourney Weaver.
They bring Sigourney Weaver back in both of these new movies, in 2016 and this, for a mid-credit scene. And for poorly written mid-credit scenes that are just there to go, look, it's Sigourney Weaver. Like, how did you do that twice? How did you not get her in the movie somehow? Like, wow.
What I don't get is how, like, in both of them it says with special guest appearance by XXYZ and Sigourney Weaver. I was like, where was Sigourney Weaver? And then boom, there she is.
Yes, both of them do that. Well, oh, look, here's and as soon as I saw Sigourney Weaver's name, I was like, you cannot tell me they're doing this again. It's like Sony doubling down. Like, no, we had some great ideas that first time. Wasn't this hilarious? And then it's weird because Ernie Hudson is, once again, the guy who's just there to have the car. Because he owned the hearse in the 2016 movie. Do you from Oprah? Really?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't mind him though being the CEO of a major corporation and being a millionaire. That's fun. Like, I got no problem with that.
Yeah. That's cool.
But anyway, I don't know. It's nuts. Last thing, real quick. Sorry, I have completely turned this into a spoiler cast, but I had thoughts. One of the things that makes it so blatantly just a tribute at the end of the day and nothing else is we watch for, in my mind, I think a lot of this is just because I thought it was a poor choice, and like we said earlier, kind of classless. We watch for a painful amount of time CGI Harold Ramis with the proton pack, and then silently saying his goodbyes, and then he disappears. And then we cut to Ghostbusters theme, and before we get to credits, it's for Harold Ramis. And we haven't even gotten to credits yet, and we say that while we're still in the movie. Boy, I don't like that. We're still in the movie, like.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it was the most blatant to me.
Yeah, I like the part in All the Money in the World in Christopher Plummer's last scene where it says for Christopher, and it's in the middle of the movie. It was wild that they did. Oh wait, they don't do that in movies. Yeah, I don't know. Like I thought that was weird, because it's weird because you get for Harold, cut to New York City, car going over the bridge, and then it says Ghostbusters. I
guess you're not technically still in the movie, but you don't realize you're not, because then we're going to go right into credits, but there's still footage.
No, that's what I'm saying is like, yeah, it cuts to, it's like a new scene where it looks like it's an establishing shot.
Because now the Ghostbusters car is going back to New York to the firehouse, which was supposed to be a Starbucks, but isn't a Starbucks.
Yeah, and then it says like...
And then we get the theme, and then we get the logo, and it doesn't say Afterlife. Now it's just Ghostbusters.
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry.
It's just Ghostbusters directed by Jason Reitman. And I was thinking, oh boy, they wish they didn't call that 2016 movie Ghostbusters.
Yeah, although I'm really glad this has a subtitle, because that kind of thing is driving me crazy. We did it with Halloween. We're doing it with Scream. Like, freaking stop that. These non-remakes that are like soft reboots in the same continuity that have the same name as the first time. This is not new, but we're doing it a lot more now than we used to. But how do we have... I'm not saying it's actual name confusion. I mean, like, everybody knows the movie is called Ghostbusters Afterlife, but it seems like, again, we're hitting the nostalgia thing so hard, we have to see the logo without the subtitle. But it does feel like subtitle confusion because, like, again, it isn't exactly that, but it's weird because the same thing happened with 2016 where it's like, we called the thing Ghostbusters, but then in the credits, we decided to give it a subtitle that wasn't in any of the advertising. Well, the last week or two, I think suddenly they started throwing After the Call on it for some reason. But in the credits, it says After the Call. I go, what the heck is After the Call? I remember being so confused by that in the theater. Like, what the heck is After the Call? Answer the Call. And then this movie does it backwards, like Ghostbusters Afterlife. At the end, Ghostbusters. Okay. It's really counterintuitive choices. I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's weird. Well, I got nothing left.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've allowed this to go on for far too long. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Sure appreciate it. We will see you again with another how we felt about in the not too distant future, and leave your comments. Let us know what you thought of this movie. We left nothing to the imagination about how we felt about it. And thanks again for tuning in. I was Captain Logan. This was Connor Nielsen.
Bye-bye, everybody.
See you later, folks.